We're stopping by Piranha Games at GDC to find out a little bit more about, well, the roadmap ahead for Mechwarrior Online. Why don't you tell us about it?
Great, I'd love to. Thanks for coming by. I'd like to we went into open beta in late October, so that was about 5 months ago now, or almost 5 months, and we've just been constantly updating the game since then, and we have just a great following of fans and players, and just really supporting us tremendously well. And we've been updating the game as often as we can for them, trying to get as much content into the game. In fact, prior to New Year, we were patching almost every week. Now we have a nice cadence of patching content and feature implementations every second Tuesday. So every 2 weeks we still patch the game. That's a new mech every month, a new hero mech, a new map every couple months, constant stream of features. So I'd like to mention a couple of the improvements we've made since we went open beta, and then I'd like to talk to everyone about our roadmap to our launch coming just a little bit later this year. First off, made a lot of improvements in the mech lab. So there's a lot of rules around Battletech and Mechwarrior and what you can and can't do in the mech lab, and all those rules are still there, but we made it much easier so that a player doesn't necessarily have to understand them. Really, as long as you understand that red means no and green means yes, you can get behind the mech lab without understanding all the rules. So as soon as I pull a weapon off of the battle mech, certain other weapons will light up green. You can say, okay, now I know I can. Those things will fit. They'll fit within the rules. I'm good to go. So that's and plus, of course, there's all the information down at the bottom once you've done that. We also made a lot of improvements in just the ease of understanding, what hard points a particular mech has and what the difference is between that mech and another one, a very quick glance. So before you make a buying decision, you can see very clearly exactly where the hard points are and what makes that mech and that variant of that mech unique. Another really important aspect we added just after open beta is called camel spec. So like a lot of games, customization is just super important, and especially in Mechwarrior and Battletech, you really want to be recognized on the battlefield for if they see your black raven coming, they strike fear in their heart. So you can go here, you can buy a number of camel patterns and make your mech look really unique. We provide those. We have add a couple patterns every couple months, a couple every month to the game. And even beyond that, you can go further by customizing the individual colors, primary, secondary, and tertiary color channels for the pattern. So you buy a camel pattern, you unlock some colors, and get even a more unique look for your battle mech. We also allow the player to customize their cockpit, which is their home away from home. So inside of there's 3 different types of things you can add. You can add something to your dash, the famous hula girl, like bobblehead type items, as well as hanging items. My favorite is a fuzzy dice, of course. And you can also put wall items on the side of your battle mech. So this is for you and when you're playing, customizing that cockpit, but also when your friends, your teammates die in the game, they start to spectate from the perspective of their other teammates. So once they're dead, they could be spectating through your cockpit, seeing all your personalized items. So it's a good way to show off kind of your home. So lastly, I guess in the feature realm that we want to mention is a number of improvements for those that aren't necessarily longtime Mechwarrior fans, making it a little bit easier for them. Mechwarrior is a very unique play style where most people play it for a few hours and they're hooked on the Mechwarrior play style because it's so unique. But there's a few nuances that you really need to get used to first. First off, we created something called testing ground. So you can, whether you're a brand new player or an old-time player, you're going to find a use for this. You launch in, it's really an offline mode, it's just you in there. There's some dummy mechs to shoot at. You can set your weapon groups, you can test the heat efficiency of your mech. And if you're a new player, you can just learn how to pilot a battle mech before you have to go up against real players. We've made a couple of tweaks for new players. One of those nuances of Mechwarrior is that, generally speaking, you have a boat throttle. Like you set the throttle, and you just walk along. The mech kind of has a mind of its own, and once you're really used to that, it's second nature, and it's perfect mechanic for Mechwarrior. But if you're new, you might expect that once you let go of that W key, or generally the forward progress key, that your mech would stop. So we've made it that way by default now. You call that the gas pedal, essentially. So push, go, let go, stop. As an experienced player or someone, once they want to, they can change that as default by, that's a default, but you can change that. And then the second thing we changed was a new player might have a hard time adjusting to the fact that you can aim in 2 different directions in Mechwarrior. You have weapons that are based on your torso and weapons that are based on your arms. And a skilled, experienced player will be able to actually aim those arms independently to shoot mechs at a higher elevation or lower elevation than they could otherwise. But by default, we've set it so that the crosshairs are locked together, so that new player really just has one point of focus to bring their weapons to bear. Again, that can be changed by going to the options menu for experienced players. And I think that's a good insight into what's gone on here in the last 5 months. Lots of it, upgrades and iterations to the product. So now I'd really like to talk to all your listeners and readers about the roadmap between here and 1.0 or launch. So we're going to launch the product this late summer, the calendar summer. So the light is definitely at the end of the tunnel. It's coming shortly. And we're going to be, of course, updating the product constantly between here and there. And I couldn't mention all the features that would be going in, but I do want to talk about 3 main features that players can really get excited about between now and launch. First would be that we're taking the game to 12v12. Right now it's 8 versus 8. So you got 2 lances in Battletech speak, or 8 battle mechs per side, and pretty soon it's going to be full 12, a dozen, or a company of battle mechs on each side. So that's an entire 24 battle mechs on the battlefield. Mechwarrior players have never experienced that before. That's going to be just add a lot more tactics and just a lot more frenetic action to the game. Second big feature is user interface 2.0. So we showed you all the improvements we've done to the user interface, but it's still we feel like there's a lot of room for improvement, especially for newer players. So the complete revamp will come with launch. This will allow us to do a lot better breadcrumbing for new players, only show them the information they need to know as they're learning it, some achievements and just ways of teaching. It'll just be much cleaner, much better for everyone. So that'll come along with launch. And the last feature I'd like to mention, which is really the big daddy feature that all of our players have been wanting since we announced the game, is community warfare. So this is the overarching metagame, faction gameplay, all the beloved factions of the Inner Sphere like House Davian, House Kirda. You can align yourself with one of those factions, fight for them. Maybe you and your buddies want to create your own mercenary unit. Well, that will then fight for one of the great factions of the Inner Sphere. There's still lone wolf options if you want to play by yourself, but in all cases you get to affect the world around you. Ultimately you get to battle for possession of planets in the Inner Sphere that give you benefits, give you bonuses, and just give a whole sense of community where this rich, deep universe of the Battletech Mechwarrior universe, you get to be a part of it and you get to affect that universe. And that's what our players have really been screaming for. They want it badly. It's coming. And our creative director, Bryan Ekman, would be happy to give you a few more details about community warfare.
All right, so community warfare is a huge umbrella that sits over top of match play. It was really important that we brought online something that was persistent, something that users actually fought for every single time they played the game. And we've also identified 3 types of players. So there's the player who just wants to play by themselves. There's players who want to play the group, but not necessarily at the level of, say, a guild or a clan. And then obviously there's the guilds and the clans. And so we've scaled the participation levels depending on those playstyles, ranging from just jumping into matches, as Mechwarrior is currently. You can just hit launch and in you go. Or you can join up with a faction like Russ mentioned, one of the great houses inside of the Inner Sphere. And when you join up with a faction or pledge your allegiance, you're able to level up with inside that faction, gain ranks, and join some of the famous units. These units then fight for fronts on the battlefield. So along the bordering edges of the conflict zone between your home territory and enemy territory are home fronts and enemy fronts. Now, you initially will control your own home front, but eventually you'll be fighting for the enemy front as well. So every single match that a faction player plays in, where you, say I'm in House Davian and I'm fighting against House Kirida, one side will be entirely House Davian and one side will be entirely House Kirida. The outcome of that match will ultimately affect who owns that front. Owning that front gives your faction, so thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of players potentially, a passive benefit, whether it be an EXP boost or access to new items or access to new mechs, things like that. Now the Merc Corps, they go after systems, very specific systems on the map, and high risk, high reward. So they go after these planets, and in the Battletech universe, there's lots of named planets where there's manufacturing centers where items are made and battle mechs are made and things like that. So they're actually going to go after specific planets inside the universe. These planets, they're going to go after occupation rights, essentially. So when they fight for that planet and they win that planet, they gain the occupation rights on behalf of the faction they've pledged their allegiance to. So say my Merc Corps unit has Russ and myself and a bunch of our friends, and we align ourselves to Davian. So we're going to go after systems that are available to us that Davian has access to. So Davian needs to control their home front and the opposing front, and then we can go strike deep inside enemy territory and go after those planets. When we control those planets, we'll be fighting, or when we fight for those planets, we'll be fighting against other Merc Corps for control of those planets. If we win, we get those benefits. The downside is we have to actually continually defend against other attacks. So you have to be online. You have to play regularly against these enemies. So it creates this constant conflict. The more planets, the more systems, and the more fronts you control, the better off your faction is going to be. And so there's a real motivation for everybody, from the solo player to the Merc Corps player, to actually participate in community warfare.
And you want to have a corp where you have people of all time zones.
That's right, absolutely. It's going to be critical that you'll be able to log in, and matches can be scheduled 24 hours a day. We're going to be careful when we schedule them initially and see how our player base reacts, because we don't want European players maybe to take advantage of the fact North American players are asleep, and vice versa, right? So we'll have to figure out how the time zones will come into play. I'm sure that'll dictate, if you're a North American guild, you probably play against North American guilds, and to make it fair so that you just don't keep flipping planets while everybody's asleep. We haven't worked out the final details yet, but that's kind of what we're thinking. So.
If we just talk about sort of the general, it seems like a lot of the feedback and a lot of the ideas that have come into since you went open beta has been about sort of the fact that you're not just dealing with veteran Mechwarrior players, and that you have to sort of reshape the game to sort of fit everyone who's playing, because it's a free-to-play game.
Yeah, it's really important. We've already captured, we feel, the majority of great Battletech players and Mechwarrior players. We've got our core audience, and they're fantastic. Now we need to start making the game more accessible to people who have never heard of Mechwarrior, have never played a Battletech game. And it's actually quite easy to do. We just have to teach them the nuances of our game. So we're really focused on adding training grounds, which is a scripted tutorial. We're focused on adding more new user controls. UI 2.0 is very important for this process because it allows us to onboard people in a very controlled manner. So as a new player who's never played Mechwarrior before, you're not just kind of thrown to the wolves. You actually go through a phased approach where first you learn about what a mech is, then you learn how to control it, learn how to manage your heat, learn how to use your weapons, then maybe you go online and play a match, and then from there you move on to the next phases of Mech Lab and customization, and learn how to make your mech yours and how to make it better, then on to EXP and the metagame, and oh hey, did you know you can make your mech even better by doing this? So that's what UI 2.0 gives us. Yeah.
Right. So players can jump in at any point right now. It's just free to join.
Absolutely. Mechwarrior.com, and you just go register your account and click the download button. That's it. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.